This is Wild Nevadacast from the studio at PBS Reno in Reno, Nevada. I'm Dave Santina, joined by Stephen Provost, a travel author who was recommended to me by a friend of the station, friend of the show, and a previous guest on Wild Nevadacast, Rich Moreno. Welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much.
So you are quite a prolific writer. You've done over 40 books. You've covered, from what I've seen, a very eclectic range, not just the kind of stuff we're talking about today, but more fiction as well as nonfiction. We're talking about the Wild Nevada focus kind of stuff, so we're going to kind of keep it into the range of travel, but you're a tremendous writer. I'm surprised you had time to even be here. You're not out writing.
Well, I do a lot of writing. That is for sure.
Yeah, dang. I'm really happy that you came in. So Rich Moreno recommended you because he had seen the books that you had written. You've done a lot of travel stuff. Most recently, there was one on the Sierra Highway, 395 area, and El Camino Sierra in California, and also a historic book about Mark Twain's Nevada. And those are your most recent two in that vein, correct?
No,
even since then.
Actually, the most recent in that vein are Virginia City Then and Now, and the Comstock Chronicles.
See, you are so prolific. I can't even keep up between the notes that I take and you coming in here. Amazing. So when you put together something like the Virginia City Then and Now, how do you decide what you're gonna pursue? First of all, I guess that's my first thought is, how do you know when you need to write a book? Like what inspires you to say, okay, this subject needs me to tackle it?
It depends. It depends on whether I'm trying to sell the book or whether I'm writing for myself. Most often I'm trying to write for myself, but occasionally I will try to write a book just to sell it. Now, Mark Twain's Nevada is an example of that. It's something that I did not think I would do because I thought everybody's written a book about Mark Twain.
Sure, yeah.
And my wife encouraged me to do it because they were having the first Mark Twain days. And I said, if I can figure out an angle on it that nobody else has taken, I will do that. And the angle I figured out was that I didn't see a book about his geographical comings and goings in Nevada. And so I decided to pursue looking at every place he'd ever lived, worked, written about, or visited in Nevada. And so that's why it's called Mark Twain's Nevada. It tells everything about why he was interested in these places, what he did in these places, and it's all organized geographically. So I wrote that book specifically for that event. And then another example is a non-Wild Nevada type thing, but I wrote a dragon book for a dragon festival.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, I think we should make listeners and viewers aware that you when we talk eclectic, we're serious. You write all kinds of things, including a lot of fantasy stuff.
I do. I write fantasy. I write science fiction. My wife and I just finished our first collaboration of a full-length novel that's called Azrael's Assassin. It's a noir science fiction novel.
Wow.
And so I am all over the place. I also edit. She is an author, and I edit her works. We've collaborated on 2 collections of short stories. They're horror-based and themed for holidays, Christmas and Halloween in this case. And we've also written our own short story books that we've edited each other's works. And so it's a great collaboration.
Yeah, you're a good team.
Yeah, we are. We're a great team.
How nice to be married to a great teammate.
Yes. And her name is Sharon Marie Provost. And a quick plug, her debut novel is Dark Arts Love Me Tinder. If you like Dexter or Hannibal, it's the kind of thing for you.
Okay, very nice. And just to be extra clear for everybody, the pronunciation is Provo, but the spelling is Provost, a silent ST.
That's correct. It's a French name. Yeah.
Got it. So when you go searching for these, spell it as though it's the word provost, but it's Provo, pronounced Provo. So as just from that description, I can get a sense that you are what we call an inch deep and a mile wide, right? You
Yes.
do a ton of things, and you're interested in a lot of things. And for my interest today, it's a lot of the travel stuff that you've done. And so with Wild Nevada, we've done a lot of road trips, of course, over the years, and there's some familiarity when I see some of the titles that you've written. You did 2 books covering the Lincoln Highway, one each for the Nevada part of the highway and the California part of the highway.
Right.
And Highway 50 being the part of the Nevada side, which I know it's always been called the loneliest road by a lot of people. And I'm curious about when you put together a book like this, do you find yourself, do you need to go and travel the road you're writing about, or does it require you to be in person in those places in order to really capture the spirit of it?
It really does, because I'm taking pictures along the way. I illustrate these quite profusely with 100, 200, 300 pictures. And they're historical photos, and there are my own photos as well. So you can see how the place looked then, how it looks now, and what these interesting spots along the highway were and are.
Nice. So that's a double duty. You're author and photographer.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you, what do you take? Do you have a particular favorite camera? Does it require a professional camera? Do you use a phone? I mean, I could imagine all kinds of things that could happen.
It's my Galaxy.
Okay. Yeah. Because they make good they make good pictures.
Make really good pictures.
Yeah. So I have to say, I have used video from smartphones on Wild Nevada many times over the years. It's perfectly functional, and sometimes it's really necessary because you really don't want to use the many $1,000 camera if you're going to be like on a kayak or something. So very good idea to keep the phone handy for some of that video and some of those photos. So you've got some more books that you're working on beyond the ones that you've done already. I know you've got at least now I should be careful here because I'm using some web information and I've already been wrong once. You've already corrected me. So I'm looking at some of these notes about upcoming books from the web. Some about the Victory Highway and US 40 and some of these upcoming, they were listed as upcoming books, but are they already?
I guess I need to update my website. I have been working off my publishing company website more than my personal website. So the Victory Highway is done.
Gotcha.
The Bonanza Highway, which is 95 in Nevada, is also done.
Yeah. So when you do a book about, say, the Victory Highway, where do you start? Like, how do you begin a project like that? Because to me, it seems like it would be overwhelming to decide.
The first thing I do is I drive. And the first book that I did about a highway in Nevada was US 50, the Loneliest Road. And the way that came about was just kind of by accident. We were thinking of going on a vacation into California, but it was, I think, incredibly hot or unable to get across the pass, one or the other. I can't remember. My wife has a much better memory for these things than I do. But we went to the Carson City Chamber of Commerce, and they have these passports. And I don't know if you're familiar with them, but you can get them stamped along the way. There are like 9, 10, 11, 12 of these places that you can get them stamped. And we thought, well, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we went on this road trip stamping this passport. And I thought, you know what? I've written other highway books. I've written about Highway 99 in California, 101 in California, and some highways back east when I was living back there. Why don't I do a book about this? And so we took that first trip. I started taking loads of pictures, and then I came home and did research. And then we did another trip, stayed at the Hotel Nevada in
Ely.
In Ely, yeah. And took a bunch of pictures over there and came back and wrote the book.
Nice. So what was your impression of Highway 50? Do you agree that it's the loneliest? I always thought it wasn't, because it seemed to me like about every hour you're hitting a town, and that seems less lonely than I always thought that the ET highway was more lonely to me, but I don't know if you've been on that one yet.
I haven't been on that one.
375 down further south.
It's one of the few I haven't been on.
Yeah, but I don't know. I always thought, well, this doesn't feel as lonely as I expected, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think it is, but there are segments of it that you can see back in the day when they didn't have service stations every 5, 10 miles. They still don't on that road.
Right.
But you had to carry your own water with you. You had to carry your own gas. You had to change your own tires. On the Lincoln Highway, it was a asphalt some places, gravel some places, railroads, rights of way some places. It was very kind of hit and miss, and you had to be prepared. So you can see that. And places like between Eureka and Austin, for example. Austin, there's not much there even. There's like one gas station there.
Right.
And so between Austin and Fallon, there's not much. I would say that the road that I think is lonelier than that is the National Old Trails Road, which was part of the old US 60 in Southern California. It goes through Amboy. If you've
Oh,
ever seen
wow.
a picture of Amboy, the old Amboy Hotel is still there. Roy's Amboy
No,
Hotel.
I have to learn about this.
And that's the only thing that's there.
Wow.
And you can go and it's desert and it's hot. And I drove that stretch of road in the summer without an air conditioner. It was 114 degrees.
Oh.
I arrived at Roy's and immediately picked up 6 bottles of water and drank them immediately.
I bet. Yeah, now that sounds very lonely and maybe even more scary too. The other thing, it's like this feels like it's more dangerous. These long stretches of highway, it's funny how they affected me when I first started driving in Nevada long distance. That was me going to college. I was going down to Phoenix,
Right.
from the Reno area. So it was, if I went straight through and I probably drove too fast and didn't stop for much except maybe the bathroom, I'd do it in about 13 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And as time went by, I started to notice a little bit more of the landscape and the what would feel like my, sort of visual markers, right? Just the landmarks along the way. Okay, I know with this, I go through this or over this pass, now I know I'm about this many miles away. And I start to, each one of these different little landmarks becomes like a little destination in itself, so that it makes the drive feel less extended, less ominously long. I don't know if you get that impression when you're out driving around on these highways, but when you're writing a book about them and you have to describe, so much of the path and the opportunities for people on the road, I imagine that your feeling about it and your impression of it from the beginning of the process of writing the book to the end is probably shifting throughout.
It is. Yes, it is. And it's interesting you mentioned landmarks, because in the old days, before the federal highway system, you had travel guides for things like the Lincoln Highway.
Yeah.
And the travel guides would literally say, go along the phone line for half a mile, then veer left at the fence line, continue along the fence line, go over the culvert, and then veer right for 2 miles. And it was very exact.
Wow.
And you would have all these landmarks that you would travel by.
Unreal. And it's hard to imagine that now, because I grew up with the big slabs, the bigger highways that are
right.
And so the idea of having to follow that level of specific instruction, and if you miss one step, you're lost, or you have to backtrack, and then you don't know. Sometimes it's dirt road. Back in the day, that to me is an alien concept. I can only respect those who were able to drive cross country back then. I don't know what that must have been like.
I can't imagine it.
And your cars weren't as reliable.
No, they weren't at all.
So they were almost explorers.
They were really explorers.
Unreal. So along, say, Highway 50 now, in any of your Nevada drives, you've been out here a lot. Do you have spots you like to revisit? Do you have places that you either go back to or you would, given the opportunity?
Well, I think the best example of that is on Highway 95. I met my wife in Goldfield, of all places.
Really?
Yeah, we were probably the only 2 people in Goldfield, because there are only 200 people who live there.
Right.
And it's just this fascinating place. But down the road near Beatty is a place called Rhyolite.
Yeah.
And you walk among these ruins of these old places like the John S. Cook Bank and the prison and the railroad depot, and it's just spooky as all get out. My wife is a paranormal investigator, and so we like to go to these old hotels. We went to the Mizpah in Tonopah.
Yeah.
And that was one of our favorites. But we've also been to several others and been looking for ghosts. I'm a bit of a skeptic, not in the sense of I don't believe, but you got to show me the money.
Sure.
So whenever I go, the ghosts get scared by me. So I've yet to see one. But she has stories that are entirely verifiable of things that she's done and
experiences.
Things that she's seen and experienced. Yeah.
Well, that's some of the fun. As we never did this on Wild Nevada, but we talked about it, is doing a haunted tour episode, certain places. And we did a little bit of that. We did go to the Mizpah in a few years back and did. It happened to be around Halloween. So
Ah.
anybody who watched that show, if you thought the Mizpah had just cobwebs everywhere, that was not the normal decoration of the Mizpah. It's a cleaner hotel than that. They just had their Halloween stuff up. And they took us on a ghost tour, and we got to go to the basement and go up to the room with the lady in red, and go to we hit a few spots that were along their ghost tour. Really fun and really entertaining. And then I remember walking around by myself in the hallway and thinking, all right, if you're gonna show up, I'm along the same lines as you. I'm a skeptic, but hey, show me something. I'm ready. I'm ready to consider it. And there was a beam of light coming right onto my doorknob to my room, and I thought, well, this looks like I'm being led to the doorknob, and I look up at the light, and it's really just the sun coming through a colored window. But it was fun for a minute to pretend like I was being introduced to my own doorknob by something supernatural. But it is. I mean, it makes it fun. It's really fun to go and explore some of these places that have such great stories, and you get to share those stories with your books. Goldfield is one that you did as part of your Century series. You did the Goldfield Century, and I was looking at that. It's amazing to me to think that there were almost 20,000 people living in that space, and a place where you met your wife when there were 200.
Yeah, in 1906, 20,000 people, site of the longest championship boxing match in the 20th century, 42 rounds.
Oh.
And they had this giant amphitheater built for it with stadium seating and everything. And they brought these people in, and the guy who promoted the fight was a saloon owner in Goldfield named Tex Rickard. Now, if you're a sports fan, you may know that name.
Yeah, that's a famous name.
He became the boxing promoter of the two richest fights, the two only $1 million fights, Gates, until 1970.
Wow.
And this was back in 1924, 1926. The first one, I think, was in 23. It was Dempsey-Carpentier. And the second one was the Dempsey-Tunney fight, the famous long count fight. And he made tons of money. He went on, but he started out as a saloon owner in Goldfield.
Huh. It's funny, Goldfield, that area. There was another person mentioned in some of the notes about that book. Not exactly in Goldfield, but not far away. A guy named Jim Casey was born there. Or
Yes.
was born. I looked it up because I was curious. It said he was born near Candelaria, a mining town, and I went and looked him up. And the name of this place is one of my favorites now. It says he was born in Pickhandle Gulch near Candelaria, and I thought that sounds like a made-up movie town. It doesn't sound like a real place, and yet apparently that's where he was born. And he made his name later when he started a bicycle messenger service, and then it became UPS, right?
Eventually. He went back to Seattle and founded UPS, but he had the bicycle messenger service. He had two partners. One of the partners was shot and killed.
Wow.
And he decided, this place is too dangerous for me. But he actually, the heavyweight championship fight I was talking about, he delivered a message to the guy who won, Joe Gans.
Wow.
And Joe Gans said, go tell everybody that I kicked this guy's patootie. And so what I did is I write historical fiction too. So I have a book, or I have a short story called Messenger Boy. What if Jim Casey met Mark Twain, who was still alive at this point, in 1906 in Goldfield, and Mark Twain went there kind of anonymously. Of course, he did not, but in my story, he did.
Okay.
And what kind of advice would Mark Twain give Jim Casey about life and business and love? And Jim Casey never got married. Mark Twain had just lost his wife at this point. So it's just this interesting little interplay of bits and pieces of history that I can refold into historical fiction.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Yeah. So, is that a book that has been released, or is that one you're still working on?
That's actually a series of short stories that's called Shades of Love, Volume 1. It's a horror-themed series. This one is actually not very horror-ish. It's more of just a what-if type of story.
Okay.
But I have some of those in there, and I have some more stalkery and ghosty and vampire type people in different stories in that book.
I like it. That's fun. Well, and Nevada's a good fertile ground for some scary stories or ghost stories or at least eerie stuff, because there's so much open space and so many interesting little places with haunted feelings to them. So yeah, it's a rich ground for it. I could see many stories coming from out there. So you did do the also the 395 book about the Eastern Sierra. That's focusing more north, right? More in California?
It's actually all from the California-Oregon state line down through Nevada, which is about 80 miles.
Okay, yeah.
And then down to, it ends now in about San Bernardino area.
Oh, all right.
But it used to go south to San Diego, so I followed the old alignment down to San Diego as well. These are all kind of historical travelogue books, so you can take them with you. Shows you pictures of things along the way, and you can see what is there, what could have been there in the past, and gives you a feeling of how things are as you travel the highway.
That's fun. So did anything stand out to you through the Nevada stretch of that highway?
I would say, well, I did a book called Carson City Century, so I'd already covered a lot of Carson City.
Right.
And I live there now. The Minden-Gardnerville area is very interesting. The Genoa is fascinating because it was the first actual settlement here in Nevada, and I've used that in my historical nonfiction or historical fiction too. But Genoa's the Mormon fort, and
right.
The
well, we did a Genoa,
there.
yeah, and I know that Dayton would always raise their hand and say, "No, it's us," and there's an endless struggle there to get to the title of first. And
right.
It's a matter of what you consider the settlement, right? What do you consider a permanent or not?
And I think they can both lay claim to one or the other.
Yeah.
Like one's the first settlement and one's the first town.
Right.
And we don't have to argue about this.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's more fun for them to argue.
I think maybe so, yes.
And it gets you some attention too. If you have no dispute, then people don't care, and they won't pay as much attention. If you're not
That's
if
true.
you're not bickering, then maybe it's a little too easy to pass by. But
yes.
But if you want to go to both and check them both out and make your own decision, then now you've got a little tourist action for
exactly.
each town.
Yeah.
Not so bad. Not so bad. Maybe that's a future book.
Yeah. Could be.
Dayton versus Genoa.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to kind of play that off a little bit when we did a show a couple years ago, and we did both. Sort of what can you do in both places for fun entertainment? The Sutro Tunnel area in Dayton, which is really an interesting area. The town of Sutro, they've kind of they're trying to restore it to a point where they can actually sell tickets to or rooms in a B&B and actually create an experience. And I'm rooting for that to happen because I think that would be a fun and exciting way to also preserve the history and the town, but in a way that's not just come and look at a ghost town, but actually come and spend the weekend and relax in a beautiful room in a gorgeous old Victorian home, and then also walk through history. All of that. I think I love that idea. And Genoa's kind of got that kind of feeling already.
It does.
It's like it's a living historical place where you see the history, but it's also modern, and you've got restaurants and you've got beautiful hiking and all these things. So I root for them all because having done them, visiting them for a while in Nevada, I get a taste of them. But we're only there for a little while, so I always feel like there's more to come back and see. And I wonder if that's the way it feels for you, having done gone through all these places.
Well, there isn't. Sometimes I do return. I've been to Genoa several times because they have the candy dance there, and we vend at the candy dance. Genoa is fascinating to me because that's the place where the four founders of Carson City started out. They wanted to buy, Abraham Curry wanted to buy land in Genoa, but it was too expensive. So he went to Carson City and bought land there by the hot springs, built a hotel that became the prison site.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
And this was all set up because they were all in Downeyville, California, which is another place I visited for a book that I'm working on Highway 49 in California. Nice. And that town was virtually destroyed by a fire in 1858. So they all left because the town had been burned down, went to Genoa, and then went from Genoa to Carson City.
Okay.
And then Abraham Curry also was a co-founder of the Gould and Curry mine up in Virginia City. So all this stuff is connected, and that's the fascinating thing about writing these books, is finding all these connections, where Mark Twain was and how he ended up becoming famous, which is basically a trick of luck.
Yeah.
And he happened to, because he was in Virginia City and knew the right guy. It's amazing how things will go different directions, butterfly effect type of thing.
Yeah.
And they went just right for him.
Wow. So Virginia City is a recent publication. So that's probably the freshest for you. Was there anything you learned about Virginia City that struck you and that stays with you that maybe you hadn't realized before?
There's a ton of different things. There is a bucket of blood up there. There used to be a bloody bucket too, and they were competing against each other, and one sued the other. And the bloody bucket is no longer there, but the bucket of blood still is.
Yeah, I've been there many times. Well, a few times at least.
And then there's the fact that Mark Twain went back there after he had left. He came back to Nevada twice, in 1866 and 1868. He came back and on a speaking tour. And at the time he was speaking, happened to be the very same time that they were doing a public hanging of Julia Boulette's murderer.
Oh, geez.
Supposedly murderer. We don't know for sure, but he was hanged for it. So he wrote a story on that and sent it back to the Chicago Republican.
I had no idea. Wow. So that's probably something we could search out and read if we wanted to, I suspect.
Yeah, that's in the Comstock Chronicles. That's my book about from 1850 to 1880. It's a year-by-year, decade-by-decade chronology of all the significant events and some kind of quirky events that you might not have heard of that happened in Virginia City.
I love it. I think the people who love dates and history and dates, times, tracking history are going to love your stuff because you've got a lot in there that chronicles. Not to steal your title, but I just did the sort of marking these things. Same thing with the highway books. You can track a trip and prepare, start to finish. You can really prepare for a journey by taking these books and reading through them and getting ready. So you're providing a service as well as entertainment.
Yeah, I think of it exactly that way. I want to preserve history. Memories are a lot shorter than they used to be. Everything is instant gratification these days, and I want to lengthen it out and make sure we learn from what we've done and enjoy what we've done and revel in the history that we have here, because there's so much history here.
Oh, and it's true, and it's incredible. We, as much as you've written about, as much as we talked about on Wild Nevada, just a drop in the bucket. No pun intended, bucket of blood. I'm just using the term. So, what have you not yet written about that you find intriguing that you're looking to do down the road?
Well, the next book that I'm working on is in California. It's Highway 49. I was born in California, and I've been here for 2.5 years, and I've written, I don't know how many books that touch on Nevada in that time, somewhere between 6 and 10.
Prolific, boy.
But I love this place. I just absolutely love it. It's a gold mine and I've written so much stuff that I'm now looking for new things to write, and I don't have anything, but something will come along, I'm sure.
Sure.
It's interesting how it all progressed. When I was doing the Highway 50 book, my wife bought me a book by Rich Moreno,
hey,
who did a book on highways in Nevada as a resource. And so I used that. And down the road, I came into contact with him because I had an anthology I was putting together, and it was fiction. He had never had anything published fictionally.
Oh.
But I invited him to submit a story for this anthology, and I put it in the anthology. And he was very happy with it, and I was very happy to have him as being a part of that with such a reputation that he has.
Yeah.
And then I was tickled pink that he did the foreword for the Comstock Chronicles.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, we really like Rich a lot, and his writing is entertaining and fun. It's similar, he has endless interest in Nevada and the history, and he's great at telling his stories. We had him on recently talking about his latest book, Frontier Fake News, and that's a lot of fun. So I love that he collaborated with you and that he was able to submit something for your book and to write the prologue. That's really cool. That's really cool. So beyond the travel and the history, you've got so many other kinds of styles that you write. Do you find yourself writing in sort of sections where you like write fantasy for a while and then switch to nonfiction, or are you able to cross over? I find that sounds like it'd be overwhelming to me.
I've done both at the same time. I'm right now on a fiction kick. My wife has just gotten into writing. As I told you, she just has her debut novel out. And
congratulations, by the way. And she's here, so I'm waving off to the side. But she's here, so yeah, we're really glad you came too. This is beautiful. So you can look forward to that. When is that? Is that out now?
That is out. That's the Dark Arts that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And then we just released a collaboration called Azrael's Assassin, the noir science fiction. And we're working on another collaboration that is a secret for now.
Oh, very good.
But it is fiction.
Very good. Okay.
And her bailiwick is horror. I'm not as big a horror writer as she is, but she's been into horror all her life. And so she's dragged me a little bit into that dark side of life.
Into the darkness with her. Hey, if you're going to get dragged into the darkness, be with your wife. It's better than being alone.
Yes.
So, well done. All right. So for everyone listening and watching this, there are so many books. I can't even begin to list them all. They're all over the place. You've even done one on the Southern highways. I mean, you're all over the place. It's so much. I'm impressed. I don't know how you do it. You must have tremendous focusing skills, because I can't imagine.
I have a love of learning. I like to learn things, and I have a way of communicating that I can communicate conversationally with other people in my writing. And so as I do it, I write. I don't wait until I'm finished researching. I write as I'm researching, and then I go back and put other details in if I find them out later.
I like that style.
And it's just a very dynamic process, and I just love doing it.
I like that. I think if I were going to try, that would be the way to succeed for me, would be to write it as you go, because it would overwhelm me if it was a big pile of data and research without any advanced work. So now with all of this, I want to make sure people listening and watching are able to follow your work. How can people keep up with what you're doing?
You can find my books and my wife's books, Sharon Marie Provost, on Amazon. They're all on Amazon. Most of them are also in Kindle form. I have hardbacks with color in them on some of the highway books that are really popular. The color came out really nicely. And you can find us at dragoncrownbooks.com. That's our publishing company. And you can find us on Facebook under our names. We have author pages and we have personal pages. And we're also on Blue Sky.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us the time today. I appreciate you coming in, and I would love it if at least one person were to buy a book and send you a note and say, I heard about this on this podcast and it inspired me to get in touch. So, if anyone who wants to get a book, make sure you send a note or email me so that I know that you did, because it always makes me feel good to help promote the great work like this. So thanks for coming in and talking about it. It's really helpful to have people like you around keeping the history alive.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Beautiful. All right. So before we go, I want to remind everybody to watch Wild Nevada on PBS Reno via broadcast or streaming at pbsreno.org and many other streaming sources. Also, watch segments on the PBS Reno YouTube channel. Now, if you have a question about Wild Nevada, or maybe a comment or a suggestion, if so, please send them to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. My thanks to Stephen Provost, and I want to thank you for listening and watching Wild Nevadacast.